Today on the channel, it's the return of the Kyle Peterson Top 5 with Lex Luger. Alright, kicking things off at number 5 on my top 5 Lex Luger list. Now this is my list, as we always say. Make sure you put your list in the comments. And I always say you got to rank them in order. Put number 5 to number 1, with number 1 being the best, of course. That's the challenging aspect of this. And my list, it was really hard. There was a lot of these that were pretty close to each other. And for the number 5 spot, I was arguing with myself, so it was very close. But I guess we'll say at number 6 was the WCW Galoob Lex Luger. We're all familiar with that figure, of course. But number 5 for me, the one that won out, was the WCW OSFTM, original San Francisco toy maker, Lex Luger. Now, I did not have this in my younger days. I was a hard pass on the OSFTM figures. By the time those started coming out, I was over the rubbery LJN type inspired figures, but I have went back over the last few years and completed this set and picked these guys up. And when I always stare at my collection of these, you know, my couch is in my collector's room and watching TV and stuff, and I can see my San Francisco toy makers from the couch. And for whatever reason, with the Sting figures being the other one, this Lex Luger always catches my eye. Is this the greatest posability figure of all time? By no means are any of these OSFTMs. But this Lex Luger just really represents a lot of Lex Luger when I sit and think about him. The muscle, double bi, flex pose. The black trunks, of course, to me, those are his most iconic trunks that he wore. Ponytail, WCW Lex Luger. That is the Lex Luger I think about when I close my eyes. And for whatever reason, maybe it's my sentimental attachment to the old rubber LJN style. And when I look at this display case of those figures, this one always catches my eye. So I knew it had to be on my list. And it really, where it netted out, it was against the WCW Galoob. And I played a lot with that WCW Galoob as a kid, but it drove me absolutely nuts. It was like the reverse of this one. Instead of the double bicep like this, he had him down like this. And it drove me nuts. It was a terrible playability figure as a kid for me. You could do DDTs with him. You could do a running bulldog with him. And that was about it. So I always was really mad at that figure as a kid, which is kind of funny, but we all had figures we were mad at. Ric Flair, the Hasbro Ric Flair, that was one I was so angry with. I was so mad that they ruined Ric Flair in that figure. That could be my least favorite figure of all time. One of these days, maybe we'll do a top 5 least favorite figures, or most disappointing figures of all time. That would be an interesting list for sure. But it was really down to the Galoob and this OSFTM, and I just had to go with the OSFTM. I didn't have it in the heyday of my playing days, but just the way this looks nowadays, and it catches my eye, that's why I'm keeping him, and he is hitting it off at number 5. All right, we've hit the number 4 spot, and the number 4 Lex Luger, my number 4 favorite Lex Luger, comes from the Jakks Classic Superstars line series. You probably know where I'm going when I say that. I love the Jakks Classic Superstars line, and I was very excited when Lex Luger made his debut in Series 15. Now, this is a very underrepresented Lex Luger type figure, I guess, in the Jakks Mattel world, current world we're in right now. Yes, we got Lex Lugers in the old Hasbro, OSFTM days, Galoob days, but we've never got really this version of Lex Luger in the modern day figures. This is the closest version to this, in a way, and we'll talk about that more later in this video. But I loved this one when it came out. I loved Lex Luger in the 1990s. I loved him in the WWF, WWE as well. I don't know if I loved him to the same degree as I did in WCW. He seemed to matter more to me in WCW. I wasn't a big fan of his All-American run. It just seemed very forced to me, and I think other people too. I think that's why he didn't win that title belt, and a lot of that went on there. But I know there's a lot of people that love the US Express Lex Luger. But this Lex Luger, I always felt was underrated, especially in the Classic Superstars line. He does have a little bit of an elf face going on. I always think he kind of looks like an elf a little bit. But when I think of Lex Luger figures, this one is usually at the top of my list. And it does help that it's part of my favorite line of all time. In a very solid series he came with as well. I was very excited for the Shawn Michaels and the Tank Abbott especially. I know a lot of people don't like Tank Abbott, but I was happy to get him. And then Zeus was another great one from this line. So a lot of heavy hitter lines in the Classic Superstars set. And I'm glad Lex Luger was represented. And that's why this one, number 4 for me. All right, we're at the number 3 spot, the halfway spot. You got your list together? Make sure you do and put it in the comments below. But the number 3 Lex Luger is probably Lex Luger's goofiest figure. I don't know if goofy is the right word, but his most off-the-wall figure. And for some people, maybe a forgotten figure or maybe a figure they didn't even know about. And that does come from Mattel. Walmart exclusive, then, now, and forever. Bash at the Beach pack. Yes, Lex Luger in face paint. You know I'm a sucker for face paint, so I had to have this on my list. And there's a few reasons with this list why I have this one on here. First off, face paint. Of course, face paint. And I've always wondered to myself, on those cold Midwestern nights, those snowy below zero nights, sometimes I'll look out my window and I'll stare at the stars and I'll say, you know what? What if Lex Luger wore face paint back in the day? What if him and Sting were face paint brothers back in my early watching days? Where would I rank Lex Luger? If he would have had a colorful face paint, would he have been a bigger star in the grand scheme of things? Would he have been more well-known, more well-remembered, more tippy-top guy, akin to a Sting in Ultimate Warrior? Do we think Lex Luger could have hit that? You know, I always wonder about that sometimes, because he definitely had the physique, he had the body. What about a little face paint? What would that have done to Lex Luger's career? But we did get a figure, as we're showing right here, of Lex Luger in face paint from that Bash to the Beach set, where we got Sting and Macho Man, of course, in that 3-pack. Very cool Brothers in Paint set. I'm all in. I'm all for it. The other reason I like this figure a lot is it goes back to that one we were talking about, Jakks Classic Superstars. We have not got a regular elite of Lex Luger in his basic black trunks, you know, non-face paint head. I think that is really strange, almost criminal at this point. Mattel really needs to come out with just a everyday Lex Luger in the black trunks, give him the title belt, give him something like that, dress him up a little bit. But we've never got that. This is really the closest thing in the elite form we have. There's a ton of people out there that have done this. I was going to do it. I kind of didn't. I didn't do it. I lost track of, I don't know if time or what. I forgot about it. Now it's a little harder to do. But a lot of people have taken this elite, popped the head off, there's a basic flashback Walmart exclusive Lex Luger. Take that head and put it on here and bam, you got that prototypical Lex Luger figure, I would say. I really want to do that. I just never got around to buying another one of these elites. I never got another one of those basics, and I'm guessing the ship has sailed. They've probably gotten pretty expensive at this point, I'd have to imagine. But that's why I like this one a lot at number 3. It is the prototypical Lex Luger body, and then throwing face paint on it. You guys know, I'm a sucker. I wear it on my sleeve. I'm a sucker for face painted wrestlers, and putting Luger in some paint always was an interesting thing, because I always remembered, what if he would have had face paint every day? What if he would have been a face paint wrestler? What would have happened to him? Where would he have been? Maybe he would have been viewed as an Ultimate Warrior Sting kind of clone copycat, never got anywhere. Maybe he would have got bigger than ever. Who knows? It's one of those mysteries we'll never find the answer out, but at least we got one figure of him in face paint, and that's why he comes in at number 3. All right, we're down to number 2 on counting down the top 5 Lex Lugers of all time as voted by me. And at number 2, we're back to Mattel. And I think if you paid attention to 3, 4, and 5, where I discussed a little bit of my Lex Luger history and fandom, I think you know which Mattel one I'm talking about. And we're talking about Elite 45 Narcissist Lex Luger. The Narcissist makes his first entry into my top 5 Lex Luger figures. Now, the Narcissist came along with Bobby the Brain Heenan. You guys know what a Bobby Heenan fan I am from back in the day. So I really did feel that gave him a lot of credibility with the WWE audience at the time. It was funny, as I've talked about on the channel before, the old schoolyard, the old playground, everybody watched WWF, but very few watched the NWA WCW. And I'd always be the rallying cry, oh, you guys got to check out this Sting guy. You got to check out this Vader guy. And everybody's like, you know, whatever. Some people would, but most wouldn't. So it was so funny when he did come to the WWF, how many kids had no idea who this guy was. And I'd be like, oh, that's Lex Luger. He's been around. He was, you know, Horseman, all this stuff. And everybody looked at me like I was absolutely crazy. They didn't, like I was growing an extra head and I came from Mars. They just knew this Lex Luger narcissist guy. It was very interesting, holding the mirror and stuff, you know, giving Lex Luger that little extra bit of show that the WWF did for sure back in the day. I don't know if the Narcissist was typically my favorite wrestler, but he came across at a point in time at one of the heights of my fandom, so you can't help but not think of the Narcissist Lex Luger when you're thinking of Lex Luger for sure. After all is said and done, his career is over now. To me, it was always feuding early 90s, Harley Race's manager, Horseman time. That's my Lex Luger. That was my favorite era after all was said and done of Lex Luger. You guys can tell me. I'm sure some of you guys love the USA Express. Some of you guys love the Narcissist. Some maybe loved Wolfpack, later day, NWO, WCW era Lex Luger. But I did enjoy the Narcissist more in hindsight than I really did at the time, if that makes sense. And Bobby Heenan, his manager, definitely helped him for me a little bit. But it went all over the place. Obviously, he had a huge, great body, much like an Ultimate Warrior without the face paint. We talked about that in the last one. But I really did like this one for Elite 45. I think they really captured the Narcissist in figure form. I love this robe, cape, I guess we call it, a cape that goes over him. Very patented stuff. It should have came with a little mirror accessory too, one of those full-length ones. That would have been really cool. Maybe we'll get a do-over on this one day. Who knows, with some of the new bells and whistles and accessories. But really liked this one when it came out, and I still like it today. And that is why the Narcissist Lex Luger comes in at number 2 from Elite 45 Mattel. All right, the time has come. We're at the number 1 spot in my top 5 Lex Luger figures of all time. Make sure you give me your comments in below in the number 5 figures in order, 1 through 5, of course. That is the challenge. It's easy to list just figures, but putting them in order, that's the challenging part. But this wasn't so challenging for me. Number 1, I'm guessing most of you guys, if you think of the most prolific and the most common, the most known Lex Luger figures, this is probably the one the majority of the audience has had at one time in their life, or probably still has at this point. And we're talking about old school Hasbro. Yes, Hasbro WWF, WWE figures, Lex Luger. That is the number 1 Lex Luger figure of all time for me. Now, I was so excited when this one came because, like I said, I loved Lex Luger at the time from the WCW, NWA days. So I was happy to get a figure form, and I talked about that Galoob one. Didn't quite make the top 5 list, but that one was so frustrating as a kid because of the lack of playability. Well, this Lex Luger gave us the playability we were looking for, and I, like a lot of kids out there, mixed my Hasbros and WCW Galoobs. Most of the time, I mix those guys together. When the Steiners came to Hasbro, I said, oh, I don't need these Galoob ones in my playability days. Then when Ric Flair came, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not going to need Ric Flair. And then I quickly went back to the Galoob because that is the superior Ric Flair figure for sure. But Lex Luger was one where I said, okay, WCW Galoob, you're out of here. I'm using this Lex Luger just for the playability aspects of it all. I would pretend he was the old school Lex Luger a lot of times. I'd use him as the Narcissist too. But it was such a nice change to get a playable Lex Luger at that time. Very happy, obviously, Lex Luger being a huge muscled up guy. That was the late 80s, the early 90s, most of the 80s really, for wrestling, so you knew I was all in. I was very happy to have him, and this is probably my most sentimental, this is the most sentimental Lex Luger for me, just because of the era it represents, the time I was collecting, and the time I was playing with this one. And you guys got to take that step back. You guys probably were there with me. We didn't know these things were coming out. All of a sudden, you would see them in a store, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, they made a Lex Luger. I remember being Yokozuna. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they're making a huge Yokozuna. This is amazing. So it was always fun. It was always a shocking moment when we got figures. And I was extremely pleased to get this Lex Luger when it came out. So for memories alone, this Lex Luger is number 1, and it did boot the Galoob out of my childhood figure federation, as I'm sure it did a lot of you guys as well, just because of the playability aspect here. So there it is, my top 5 Lex Luger figures of all time. I'm interested, like I said, put yours in the comments below. Give me the number 1 through number 5, and let me know your thoughts on Lex Luger. And I'm very curious where he would have been if he would have had face paint back in the day. Would he have been lost in the mix, do you think? Or would he have been a bigger star? I don't know. That's a question for all you guys out there. I guess put that in the comments below as well. Don't forget to like this video, of course. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. We're doing top 5s all the time, every Thursday. And we'll do top 10s at some milestones, and every once in a while. We got a few characters out there through the years, the Ultimate Warriors, the Hulk Hogans, probably the Cenas, the Rocks, the Austins. There's a lot of guys that we got to probably do a top 10 list for because they have so many figures over the years. I think it's just fair to do them in a top 10 environment. So stay tuned for those. But hey, I'm always up for recommendations of top 5s. There's just a lot of guys we can do. And we'll get to them all eventually. It's a marathon, not a sprint. This is many years it'll take us to get through everybody. And I don't even know then if that could be the case. So give me your top 5 requests out there. I might add them to the list. I believe you me, we'll get to everybody eventually. It just, I'm doing one video a week. we'll eventually get to them. But like I said, I'm very interested to hear your comments below, and I want to know your top 5 list. Don't forget to follow me on social media at SirPaul64 on Twitter, _Kyle_Peterson on Instagram, and of course, Pro Wrestling Tees, search Kyle Peterson. Be the most stylish guy or gal in your neighborhood. So there it is for Lex Luger, the top 5 Lex Luger figures of all time as voted by me.